And as we're admitting people, Ben, I just started the recording, so we don't forget to get that started.
Right, and I think May was going to go over this, but people who are joining us, please keep yourself on mute, and you should know that this session will be recorded and will be available along with the slides later. Welcome, everybody. Just going to wait one more minute and then we'll get started. If people who are not presenting can stay on mute and turn off the video, that would be awesome. All right, May, what do you think?
I think let's just give it 1 minute.
Okay.
And then we'll get started so we don't lose time.
Sounds great.
We're at 19 participants right now. And I'm sure people will be joining as we go on through the session. So we'll all right, so I think let's get started so we don't waste your time on this session. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning at the NAFSA Region 11 Conference IAM session, Turnkey Global Campus Partnerships. Just a quick reminder on several things that we have today. This session is being recorded, and we ask you to please stay on mute throughout the session, but if you do have any questions, you can feel free to put them into the chat. We have somebody monitoring the chat. There will be time at the end of the session for questions and answers for maybe last 20 minutes or potentially more. It depends on how the conversation will go. And I wanted to, again, thank you for participating in the NAFSA conference events. We have more than 10 more events coming up between now and the end of October, and I hope you can register and join these as well. And keep on your calendar our next big event, which is the business meeting for NAFSA Region 11, happening next week on Thursday at 4 p.m. And hope to see many of you at that event as well. To get us started, I will introduce Ben Waxman, who is chairing this session for us today, and he will introduce himself and the panelists on this session.
Thank you, May, and thanks to NAFSA for giving us this opportunity to explore with you. This is really exciting, and I really thank you all for joining us today. This is going to be one of the most valuable Zoom conversations you've participated in, and I can say that because the bar is really low, right? I'm kidding. We've all been involved in a lot of Zoom conversations, some better than others. I was involved in one yesterday that was produced by Chronicle of Higher Ed about incorporating work skills, workplace soft skills into academic curricula, and it was really an insightful conversation. It was really great. This one is going to be valuable too, in large part because we have Intead Duron from MCPHS, the Mass College of Pharmacy and Health Science, sharing her experience opening up a campus in Seoul, a program in Seoul in very short order through a program offered by CIEE. And we have Seamus Harreys here from CIEE to talk more about the structure of that. And Ita's experience is really pretty amazing, and I think you'll really value what she has to say. So Seamus and I are going to kick things off and get things going, but we're going to be as quick as possible so that we can get to Ita and then also to your questions and be able to answer them about what this innovation is all about. This is recorded, slides will be available. Please do keep yourself on mute. You can ask questions in the chat. We have Rachel Trahan here from the Intead office who's going to be moderating the questions. The stories you're going to hear today are really valuable, and I want to introduce myself first for those of you who don't know me. Ben Waxman, I'm CEO of International Education Advantage, also known as Intead. And there are a number of friends here, but I know a number of people who signed on who probably have never heard of us. And so why are we relevant? Universities hire the Intead team to help them build brands both locally and globally. We're a marketing agency, and we're known for our trend analyses, our strategic execution, and really a geeky love of data. And if you're not familiar with us, I really encourage you to take a look at our well-followed blog. You can find that on our website and sign up. We've been sharing research insights on enrollment marketing weekly for over 10 years now. And people really have found a lot of value there. Our agenda today, if you want to advance the slide, Seamus, is really just 3 areas that I'm going to be very quick with some context about what's going on, the challenges we're all facing now, looking at some cool data. Seamus is going to give you an overview of CIEE's Fall International Program, and then we're really going to hear a lot from Ita about what that experience was like in Seoul, and we will look ahead to what could happen in spring 2021 and fall 2021 for those who are interested in creating these kind of flexible options. Let me start with the obvious, and what we're talking about today is business planning. Business planning is based on reviewing data about past performance and projecting out into the future, essentially making predictions based on thoughtful trend analysis, right? When making predictions, there are always unknowns, and that's why predictions are often wrong. The more unknowns, the more ambiguity, the more difficult it is to predict. And I know you have all noticed that we have a whole lot of ambiguity facing us all right now. And so when businesses are planning ahead, when they have a low confidence index, you tend to feel as though you're on shaky ground, so you turn to flexibility. You turn to creating opportunities that give you the ability to pivot quickly as new information comes to light. And so we want to stress the importance of what we're talking about right now is making decisions in weeks and hours, which is really contrary to what higher ed typically does in months and years. And Ita is going to speak to that and the challenges she faced doing that. And that's why her stories are so important. We know that travel to and from the US is really challenging right now. China, India, so many other regions are a real challenge. When restrictions are lifted, we're all going to change our plans. But in the meantime, flexibility is really, really critical. So let's just look at a few data points that really inform and help us have insight. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with these. This is your assigned reading. The slides will be available. So I just want to make you aware that these kinds of things exist. There's a really nice website from ECMC Foundation, the link is in the slide, where it tells you, and it's updated regularly, what's going on with different institutions around the country and how they are doing online, hybrid, in-person, all of that. It gives you context to where you fall in that kind of work. The next slide is about what students want, and this is McKinsey data. Again, it's a little bit small and hard to read. You can return to this, but we know that students really want connection. They want the full campus experience. And the next slide kind of summarizes what we see, what students want, where there is this connection that online is seen as secondary to in-person, and it takes a real personality type to succeed at online. They want return on investment, and that is more prominent for them now than it's ever been. And again, online is being seen as secondary. And they want certainty that there are flexible options. If I come to campus, but then COVID rises, what is the alternative? Are you going to send me home? Are you going to quarantine me? Is there something else going on? So certainty is helpful, and safety is critical for both students and parents. And the next slide is about what you all know you are facing, that there, again, from McKinsey and other sources, the decline in revenue and what that means for institutions, the scrambling that's going on to try and figure out what to do. And the next slide kind of summarizes that, where the declines are hitting domestic, they're hitting international enrollment. Just a couple weeks ago, George Washington University cited some really significant declines, more than 20% decline in enrollment, more than $70 million budget hit. That was both first year, upper class, international, really across the board. They were seeing declines that really hit them. And more numbers like that are coming out across the country. So these are some of the areas where declines are happening. You're getting hit with housing, parking fees, food service, all of those areas where you typically make some money. That revenue is not coming in addition to tuition. And so the response is looking deeper to your waiting lists and partnering with other education institutions, which is what we're talking about here, rapidly restructuring, and use of online is critical. And we've all seen these shifts happening rapidly. That's not news. What is news is the flexibility that having a very fast overseas campus or program in place where your students from China or other sources can go when they can't actually travel here. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seamus, who can talk to the structure of what CIEE has to offer before Ita tells you what the experience was really like.
Great, thank you, Ben. Can everyone hear me? Ben, good. Excellent. So as Ben said, I'll give you an overview of what we're doing for the fall, and then a glimpse also into a little bit we've been able to expand our offerings for the spring. Just to make sure that there's a level setting as we're introducing our organizations. If you don't know CIEE, we're the oldest and largest nonprofit study abroad provider, but we're also an exchange. So international students coming into the United States. So we really have a bi-directional expertise. Before pre-COVID, we were about 50,000 participants, both going out from the US and coming into the US. We are a mission-driven nonprofit, and it really is focused on that globally connected world and helping individuals develop those skills and connections and bringing the world together through these exchange programs. As we all know, we're challenged with the fact, and whether it's study abroad, whether it's our international students not able to travel to the United States, the pandemic continues to impact us. We have been challenged about where we can offer programs safely. We do have 31 students on study programs this fall. We're one of the few study abroad providers that are able to do that. And we have developed with the challenge of not really being able to get clear and apolitical information on health, safety, and security, developed our own health risk index across our 32 sites in relative comparison with the US. And you can see this report we produce every 2 weeks for our partner institutions. And if you're interested in receiving this, please email Leslie. But this really is the context, obviously, that we're dealing with, and where can we support both US students studying abroad, but for our discussions today, international students who are unable to travel back to the US. So we began really in April and May thinking about what is our opportunity to support where institutions' pain points are. And so we offered a custom experience, basically creating an American classroom in country. We offered it across all of our sites. And we had eight institutions who helped us partnered with us to create 9 programs in 3 different locations. In Shanghai, China, Seoul, South Korea, and Legon. We have right now a little over 1,200 participants from 8 different countries in those 3 sites. The program sizes generally range from 40 to 400, although our Legon is actually a little smaller than that to serve a population of African students who are unable to get to the United States. We are serving predominantly freshmen, but we do also have upper class and a first semester graduate program. And basically it's 8 to 9 months that we went from signed contracts to, or 8 to 9 weeks, I should say, signed contracts to students on site, which is not the ideal, but as Ben said, this is is a challenging time, and we have to be agile and nimble. Normally, we would do a program like this. It would take us 12 to 18 months of planning and participation with an institution in order to develop it. Some of the things that we've had to manage, local and national COVID guidelines. We've had shifts in our location in Shanghai of where we could offer our classroom and housing due to government mandates through our partner institution there. We've had to go online for the beginning of both our study abroad and our students in Seoul, in which we created co-curricular 10-person activities as there was a spike in Seoul. Challenging times that we have to navigate, but we're still able to provide a rich in-person experience. Obviously, a close partnership with the institution. This is creating their bespoke branded experience in that location or multiple locations in the case of one institution. And we have to look at creative ways, bringing in alumni, bringing in people online in order to create a really strong bond with that institution, creating that institution's experience, even though that experience is in Shanghai. And then challenging as we've had to sourcing faculty capable of teaching in English, having a U.S. Classroom experience can be, we are usually very good at about doing that, but can be challenging when expats could not get back to China, or in some cases people leaving in that experience. But we have been overall successful in being able to do that or negotiating with our partner institution to best solve that. So at this point, the success of the fall is that we've had over those 1,200 students arrive safely. We're running over 100 courses and recitation sections, which are really flipped classrooms. So it's an online course with a TA managing an in-class recitation experience. We've hired and trained qualified faculty and TAs capable in teaching in English. And then we've also expanded staff in order to ensure that we had enough staff. We are basically setting up a small college in Shanghai, for example, with about 1,100 people, about 100 people in Seoul. So really critical that we had the staff to support the students and the faculty to support the students. Whoops, skipped a slide there. Just to give you a taste of some of the programs that we're running and how we're delivering the academics. They are custom, so I'd emphasize that each one is really built with that particular institution in mind, including the student activities and the engagement with alumni and the tour of companies or career exploration that is connecting with alumni. We have one institution that's running about 200 students in Shanghai. CIEE is teaching 2 in-person courses from CIEE's catalog of over 3,000 courses or for each student, and then the students are also taking 3 online courses, and that is both a freshman and a classroom experience. We are following the partner's academic calendar. We have another institution that's doing 400 students, mainly lectures online, but also a flipped classroom for TA-supported recitation. And we're using the partners' courses and syllabi, and that is a first semester freshman program. We're following the partners' calendar. We have a graduate pathway program that we're running in Shanghai. It was originally taught 100% on-site with CIEE. That was the plan. We ended up having a little bit lower enrollment, so we've split it. So it's now a combination of online and in-person. And that is a custom calendar we've created bespoke for that particular program. The program we'll talk about today that Ida is going to give you really in-depth experience around partnering with CIEE is our program in Seoul, in which we're partnering with Yonsei, our institution in Seoul, to really provide direct enroll courses as well as support from the CIEE programs. We're running a freshman program out of 6 countries, including China, that have come into Seoul. And we're following the host institution we have in Seoul. And then we have 10 students in Legon with 1 course on-site and the rest online. And they're courses from our existing study program that we're providing, and that's a freshman program. And these are 5 examples of the 9 programs that we're running this fall. Just to give you a glimpse of what we've attempted to do to expand this, mainly these programs are custom, and we would need about 40 to 50 participants to customize that program. We can modify existing study programs for smaller enrollments, and we didn't really offer that for the fall, but we've expanded to offer Since many of we have, I think, 77 study programs that we plan on running for the spring, provided COVID and travel restrictions allow us to, and international students can join those programs, and we have several institutions looking in that. Just to give you a sense of the dimensions that we can customize, it can be the academic model from CIEE fully providing the academics to partially providing the academics to CIEE is not providing any. It's really just a wrapped around service. It could be standard courses we offer or our direct entry partner institutions do. Could be bespoke, or it could be an institution's courses and syllabi. And we're doing all of those right now. It could be a standard CIEE calendar. It could be your calendar. We're even now creating unique calendars, as you saw with one institution. We have just freshmen, upper class, both, and graduate students, so it can be a broad student focus. There is challenges with the amount of courses you can offer, so it does mean that there's more online as you go into the upper class possibility. And then the student life. We have a standard offering that we do for our study abroad students that typically doesn't work exactly for an international student, particularly with some of the more ethnographic and cultural focuses. So we've modified those in most cases, in some cases fully customized, and including housing. So normally in study abroad, we don't run commuter and housing, but we are doing that now. Some don't require housing, some make housing optional, and some are requiring housing. Again, the dimensions that we can customize to create a unique branded experience. Just to talk about the timeline, we engage with an institution and around the development of their program and quickly define that, develop a memo of proposal and a memo of understanding. Our academic team reviews and approves the syllabi and is looking to source the faculty that we would be able to use to teach the courses on ground if that's what's needed, and then obviously going into program implementation. This normally, as I said, is spread across a 12 to 18 month period. For the fall, it was really around 9. Some were actually shorter than that, 9 weeks. And we're attempting to add a little bit more time, so really working with institutions right now to finalize this as we in the next month, so that we have time to ensure that we can recruit the faculty and they have time to enroll the students and prep the students for enrollment in the program. Majority of our schools that are doing our fall program are looking to go to the spring because they don't see the ability for students to get to the United States in the spring, but there still is hope. Some key lessons learned as sort of prepping for Ita to come and talk to you. Early and enthusiastic institutional leadership, decision, and support for this program. We had many institutions that really were having a challenge being nimble and agile and trying to think about rapidly in 2 to 3 weeks, getting syllabi approved, enrollment management, academic, and senior leadership on board, and others that were able to do it and move very quickly. We try to keep it very simple. Complexity is very challenging in a short-term time plan, especially when you're dealing with sizes of 100, 200, 50. So we wanted to make sure that we kept it simple. We had to maximize the planning time, and we learned that we had to do plan Bs for almost everything in case something happened. If all our courses can go online, if an individual student has to be quarantined, or if there's a whole shutdown for a period of time. The importance of partnership. This is a program we do together. It isn't a program you just hand to CIEE. It is, the keys are communication, collaboration, and transparency, and that in order to maximize the ability to be agile and nimble. And we can offer programs at a compelling price point. That first institution I showed you that has 200 students in Shanghai estimated that they are able to retain about $3 million in revenue that they would probably have lost without running an in-person program, because they were not having the uptick in the purely online offering. But that is really to tee up to have Ita come and speak to you about her experience in partnering with us and her experience internally in her university's decision to leverage this program and what they've learned and what the value is for them. Ita?
Thank you, Seamus. And you can move on to the next slide. Thank you, May and Ben, for inviting me to share how MCPHS staff and faculty experienced the incredibly quick creation of our SOL program and our collaboration with CIEE. So as Seamus said, my name is Duron, and I'm Executive Director of Global Strategy and International Programs. And in my role, I support international student enrollment, experience, and success at MCPHS. And part of those responsibilities include positioning MCPHS in the international marketplace. MCPHS has been specialized in healthcare programs for over 200 years, but it is in the last 4 years, ever since College Scorecard ranked MCPHS graduates as the top learners in America, that the university has been able to spotlight the comprehensive method used by faculty to prepare their students for the future healthcare professions. MCPHS not only welcomes students from diverse backgrounds, but the school acknowledges and seeks to expand their important contribution to these outcomes, making the campus very international, very diverse, with quite a cosmopolitan feel to it. And being a medium-sized private nonprofit university, the school benefits from a short chain of command, and that makes it agile and dynamic. The importance of which I'll highlight later in the context of this webinar. And the special focus character of the university brings in students who are driven by these specific goals. So it is my job to translate these characteristics into a reality for international students and not only the domestic students. Next slide. So we are on. I was invited here to share MCPHS experience with the custom semester that we are offering for our students in Seoul this fall. Classes started on, well, the orientation started August 31st, so the program started August 31st. But I want to take you back, and I'm sorry to do this, but I need to take you back to May 2020 in the context we were all in, while we were all swimming in the panic of the pandemic, the angst of what was to come, as well as the novel and overwhelming situations and crises we all had to manage. Our international students, in the same frame of mind, seem to be more and more uncertain to come to the United States. In this period, that's when I received an email from Ben Waxman suggesting a collaboration with CIEE for a custom program abroad. Now, this idea was way out of our comfort zone, but it seemed to address the many issues we were facing with our students abroad. The first and most important step in the success of this great adventure was making sure that we had firm leadership commitment, as Seamus mentioned. And I don't think there's any way to overstate that importance. I began with our Chief Enrollment Officer, who has a gift for reading the crystal ball, and she'll very quickly know which ideas are going to work and which won't. And with her support, we decided that first of all, we need to have a clear understanding of the goal. Obviously, this was not going to be revenue generating per se, but it was going to be revenue saving. And we were not aiming exclusively for fall 2020. This was a clear spring 2021 retention strategy, spring 2021 and onward. So here we are now at the beginning of June for a program start August 31st. We discussed the ambitious timelines. Seamus gave you a 1, 2, 3 step timeline. Well, we didn't go through that, or rather we did, but it was all at once. We went through all the steps simultaneously because of the time constraints. Now, the university size, as I mentioned, makes it agile and dynamic, and this allows MCPHS to shorten certain timeline constraints that would have been insurmountable otherwise. So trusted partners, I think it's important to say that we had a previous experience with Intead. MCPHS had brought in Intead consultants to help us resolve a sensitive situation we had for Vietnamese student enrollment about 2 years ago. And we knew how they worked. They don't practice cookie cutter consulting, so I knew that they would advise us through the lens of our specificity. I had, in a previous life, worked with CIEE in Europe to create intercultural programs for their Paris office. So I knew their program designs, the professionalism, the rigor of their staff, and most importantly, their ethos. With this knowledge of the institutions from the inside out, it allowed us to do our due diligence much faster than usual, let's say. So we discussed the project with the president and provost, who wanted the decision to be collegial. And we shortlisted members of the MCPHS community who would ask the right questions, and we gathered consensus. This is the trickiest and most complex part of this project. If you are considering this project for your university, it is important to have the committed support of leadership. And by leadership, I mean horizontal opinion leaders just as much as the vertical decision makers. Next slide, please, Seamus. I was very lucky to have strong-willed and smart people to work with. This would not have been possible without the leadership and patience of our Director of International Academic Services, Sarah Sanford. She has the advantage of being both faculty and staff, but more importantly, she understands the overarching goals while breaking down each department's needs and priorities. She was our intercultural translator, and there was no linguistics in that. With Sarah, we built a solid team, which helped us foresee and work through the many trials that this project went through. I also want to take a moment to recognize the various staff and faculty. I don't have time, I was given a time limit, so I don't have time to mention each of them, but it is so important to know that, first of all, the university decided to give students full flexibility in choosing their online classes or to have a hybrid on-campus instruction. So students already had two options. Faculty had to recreate their classes within these options, so they pretty much had to redo their entire curriculum. And just when they thought that they could not fit anything else onto their workload, Sarah and I approached them with a third option. As daunting as that might seem, I have never seen such commitment from a team as we did when we had those conversations with faculty. Through the summer, we kept the MCPHS community abreast of the development of the project, its challenges, and its successes. And as a community, we were able to share the experience. Next slide, please. So it was not an easy path. We had a lot of surprises. We were expecting surprises. The most difficult of all we knew was a risk was the ebb and flow of COVID-19 and government and public health guidelines and restrictions. About 2 weeks before the start of classes, the South Korean government decided to limit group activity to 50 participants, and then very quickly went to 10 after they saw an increase in COVID confirmed cases. Now, you saw in the health risk assessments that Seamus shared, or you might have seen, might not have seen, but the number of Korean cases is much, much lower than any ratio that you can compare to the United States. But one of the reasons that it is lower is because they take these drastic steps. And so Korea was pretty much going back in lockdown, and that forced the classes in Seoul to go online. This was for a program that we had advised students to take so that they would not have to have a full semester online. Now, there were a number of times when various members of the community shared legitimate concerns and calls for cancellation of the project due to what seemed like insurmountable obstacles. But this was one development where our core team began losing faith. And it was thanks to the professionalism and the thorough risk assessment and management that CIEE is known for, and that I knew from our past experience with them, that we were able to understand the options and move on to a plan B. Legal. Be prepared to have long discussions with your legal department, and there are no shortcuts. And rightly so. These are discussions that you need to be prepared to lead. You need to know who is going to be able to help you in bringing the answers, the responses to the legal department. And you need to be working, we were lucky to be working with someone on the CIEE side who was flexible and who understood the various legal constraints that we were up against. Now, as you know, creating a new campus requires a slew of creditor approvals. So that's an area that will require transparency and communication with all of the accrediting bodies. Travel restrictions, embassy closures, and visa delays, those were not avoided by offering in-country classes. Actually, they were doubled because we offered this not only to Korean students, but we offered them this to any student who was interested in attending the Seoul classes instead of coming to the United States. So these problems were actually doubled because the students would need to request a Korean student study visa or student visa and a US visa, neither of which were simple. And we did end up having 6 students from countries outside of Korea who made it. We had an issue with housing the week before school started when students began arriving on campus. Well, they discovered that there were other cheaper, convenient, and of comparable quality options available to them. So we had a wave of housing cancellation requests that we had to manage. That was a tough one. If you can hear a drill, it's the workers outside. So I hope it doesn't bother you. But I'm almost done. I did want to talk to you about results. This project started as a retention tool, and it turned out to be a recruitment tool. The Seoul classroom created a buzz. We could have enrolled 50% more students if we had had more time. But although we had to refuse those students because of the time constraints, we were able to engage with them. We had about 30 new applicants thanks to this project. We were able to enroll 5 of them for the fall classes and settle on commitments for future terms. So we're very confident that this program, the fruit of this program will continue we'll be able to reap the fruit of this program for much further than the fall. Now, this venture reinforced our positioning as a caring university who seeks results for its international students and meets them where they are. So it fit perfectly with the identity that we have tried to establish for MCPHS abroad. And then one last benefit that I would like to mention, and that I could not have foreseen, was that thanks to the many meetings and conversations that we had with families, we strengthened and created loyalty and trust. We strengthened the relationships and we created loyalty and trust with these families, with the parents who we had little communication with in the past. We would do this again, of course, with more time and better preparation, hopefully, if we do it again. Our next steps now are to assess the learning outcomes of the students. And we are seriously considering a reproduction of the program, be that in the spring or be that in another destination. Nothing is confirmed yet, but it's been a very positive experience. And I'll send it back to you, Seamus.
Thank you, Ita. That was really great. And Seamus is popping on right now too. One quick question, Ita, that I was thinking about. When you communicated this opportunity to students, the opt-in rate, you had certain projections about how many would say yes to the opportunity. And I think there was a surprise there as well.
Well, what we, the first estimates we did when we started talking to Seamus, because of course, for a minimum ROI, you need a minimum of participants. So the first estimates were purely from students who we thought at the time governmental restrictions and public health guidelines would allow, the COVID situation would allow them to actually get there. And then from there, we went to those same students and we had focus groups and gauged, you know, it's sort of a mystical process, but gauged their interest. And it was from from the results of those meetings that we estimated the number of students. We estimated conservatively, just to make sure, you know, it's better to have the positive surprise. And we did. We ended up having almost double the students that we expected. And the biggest surprise, as I did mention, was that although we only communicated to students who had already sent in their enrollment deposit, word of mouth brought in a number of new applicants and a lot of interest from students who had not yet contacted us.
That's great. It's so encouraging. I think people really gravitate toward those who are innovating during times of challenge. So I'm not surprised that the parents also engaged with you more. I think I love hearing Ita's stories. I know Seamus went through some very complex information about the structure of these things very quickly. And the slides, as we said, are available to you, but we now have close to 20 minutes for Q&A. And if people would like to chime in on the chat, and ask your questions, and perhaps Ita can answer those. Seamus can jump back to some of his slides about the structure and the process and how things can be customized and branded and all the rest. So Rachel, if you want to feed us questions as we go, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sounds great. Hope you can hear me.
Yep.
So we have a first question from Nellie. She wanted to know, Ita, this is directly for you. Are these students that you were talking about matriculated at MCPHS?
That acronym is not easy, is it, Rachel?
It's not.
Yes, all of these students are fully students of MCPHS. I don't know if we mentioned that they are also following online classes directly from MCPHS.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I have another question. It's for CIEE about partnering with Chinese universities. We have a participant wondering, have you encountered difficulties about the approval process from China's side? Also, how about the credential of degree from Chinese Ministry of Education? If you could touch upon that.
Sure. There are both advantages and limitations that you have to be aware of with partnering with a Chinese institution, and each has their own characteristics. Eastern China Normal University is our partner in Shanghai, and we have been a partner for over 2 decades with them. So that has allowed us to really develop a firm and frank relationship with them around what our options are. But it is everything that we do in Shanghai, in China, for that particular program has to be something that has to be approved by them, since they oversee us. The site, we are approved through ECNU to offer our programs through the government, the Ministry of Education. And even when they were required to de-densify their campuses and had to source a second location for us to be able to provide our classrooms. ECNU got approval for that extension campus that ECNU already had for us to be able to use that. So it is, we talk about the relationship with the institution, but the relationship with that host institution, if that is how you operate within that country, is really critical. They have been really good partners with us. There were other partners that we had that were unable to do this in Beijing and unable to do it for us or for other universities or for other providers. So we were pleased at both their ability to offer us solutions despite COVID, but also their ability to expand where we've been 300 to 400 students in Shanghai. We've never done 1,100 in Shanghai. Similar with Yangtze in Seoul. Not only were they able to expand to offer to international students, but they also offered bespoke programs that met MCPHS course requirements, speaking taught in English, and that was really critical because that's not something that we've done with them in that particular model in order to ensure that we could satisfy the course requirements that MCPHS had. I also want to mention to the earlier question, all the rest of our programs that are freshman programs are all matriculated students. We have in the past partnered with multiple institutions around offered pre-freshmen, freshmen that matriculate in January, a fall program. So we've done both of those, but just all the programs that we have in both Seoul and in Shanghai and in Legon are all accepted matriculated freshmen.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. We have another question that came in. So Ida had mentioned the success of the program was helped by being a smaller, agile institution. How do you think that this would have worked for a larger, more bureaucratic institution from both the university and provider standpoint?
Do you want me to?
Sorry about that. Again, I'd have to say, I'd have to come back to the point about leadership commitment and being able to choose those who are in your nucleus, that core team, because, back then, back in the previous slide, I had written, we need champions. And I changed it to cheerleaders intentionally because you need not only people who are going to do the work, who are going to carry the burden of the decision and who are going to be, in the mechanics, but also you need people who are positive, who are excited and who can excite about the program and who can share the benefits of the program to each of the different levels of decision-making and departments who are going to be participating and taking care of these students. I have to say that again, Sarah Sanford was really the one who went out to speak to these opinion leaders and collected the concerns, and together we answered them and worked through them. It will be more difficult for a larger university because I've worked with larger universities, but I would tend to say that the process would need to be similar. And Ben and Seamus, if you want to chime in on that, because you probably have more experience with this.
Yeah, I can tell you, excuse me, that we did bring a number of other partners to the table. And Seamus and I had conversations with their leadership, and they came back and said that they were going to decline, or they came back weeks and weeks later and said, okay, travel is still restricted. It's June, it's July, we want in. And the challenge that CIEE has in sourcing all the faculty in the space and everything else, housing, possibly lab space, things like that, in a matter of 2 weeks or something like that, it's not possible. The institutions that declined tended to be some of the larger, although some of the large institutions, Penn State and others, did sign on. So it can be done, but it does have to be a tight-knit group, as Ita has described. Seamus is the one who really had to work with each of these groups to get them to the, yes, we're in, and 8 schools did it. So I'm sure you have some insights into what makes a successful team.
Sure, just some commonalities that we observe. We do have, Penn State, Tulane, that are Rutgers from New Jersey, Syracuse, that are also using it. So some large privates, some very large publics, and also some smaller institutions as well that were using it. So it is a variety. Some commonalities that I observed. One is the study abroad person was many times bringing this forward to the International Student and Scholar Institute or group and the enrollment and the international admissions team or head of enrollment management, and that those groups having a clear connection to the provost and the academic side, because quickly this turned into which syllabi, what's required, which courses to be online, what needs a recitation session, flipped classroom, what is CIEE course can you use, or what would CIEE deliver of our syllabi. So that ability to rapidly move up, I think as Ita talked about, and then work across, so get to the clear decision makers. It really is a combination of the enrollment side and the academic side. And then of course, the international, those who have an experience with supporting and assisting both recruiting and bringing international students into that institution are really critical in order to do that. So we did see some large institutions. We saw some small institutions both decide to do it and be able to move in a very agile way, and other institutions just weren't. And many of those institutions are now coming back to us and saying, now that we've had more time, we see our experience for the fall and online is not quite what we want, and are having conversations with us now about spring.
And let me just be a timekeeper here. It's 11:51. We do have a hard stop at noon. We have a number of additional questions that have come in, and we'll get to those. But I just want to make people aware that at 12 we'll be signing off, and this has been great. Thank you for the questions and the participation. Rachel, who's up next?
All right, so we have a question for Ita. This is from Sandhya. And she said, I'm interested in learning about the regulatory oversight from accreditation organizations, NECHE for MCPHS, as you set up learning centers.
Well, something to keep in mind is that this, excuse me, this was brought to the table during a pandemic where the situation was exceptional, the decisions were exceptional, and Nietzsche followed us. We did go to present to them. We reached out. They set up a panel to listen to what we had to present to them. Our Vice President of Academic Affairs presented the project, the reasons for the project, and how this was going to help students. I won't be able to quote, but I'll paraphrase. Her report back to us was she was proud to be part of this institution because the feedback she got from the panel was extremely encouraging, and they felt that MCPHS was responding to students' needs in a crisis. Again, that's the COVID context of June 2020.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. I have another question. It's more of a practical question for CIEE about the online courses. Could you please share with us how you solve the problem of lecturers having a 12-hour time difference with students in Asia, or how you overcome the block of things like YouTube, which many of the faculty would share videos as part of their course material?
So on the first part of the question, we do have synchronous learning happening. That is something that these institutions negotiated with their faculty. They are typically teaching at night in the US. Most are in Eastern Standard Time or Central Time, and they're teaching 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock at night, in which we have reserved classroom space for them in the morning, China time, which would be 8 or 9 or 10 typically in the morning, in which then we have added that to our course offerings of mainly all of the in-person courses that are in the afternoon for that institution. As far as YouTube, we have gone around. There's a variety of things that can't be used. We have a VPN in CIEE that allows us to pull those videos down and share them locally through the servers available that we have on site. In some cases, we will have to do some translation of that or download that movie and distribute it in a different manner. In certain places, we have the ability to have access to that, as well as Facebook and others, through our own networks that we've negotiated with ECNU to give students access to, U.S. students. So we've been able to leverage that going forward. But it is a challenge that we have to overcome. We do have to check out to make sure that the learning management system is fully accessible from Shanghai. And most cases we have been able to do that. We in some cases have to switch the server to one in Ireland to ensure that they have full access to that. But normally what we're doing with those YouTubes is converting them over and embedding them in some other way so that the students can see that.
Perfect, thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. So in terms of timing, if folks are interested in doing this for spring of 2021, how quickly would they have to act? And could you give a generalized idea of cost?
So act now as soon as possible. We can give you an outline of some of the key internal decisions you've got to think about and engage with me or my team, I would say in the next week. The later we wait, the harder it is to ensure that we can actually deliver on the program, and we don't want to be in that experience. So we really need people to act in the first half of October and really have those discussions underway. It is beyond that, we'll probably have to tell people we won't be able to assist them at this point. There are some challenges that we have for spring that you should be aware of. One is that most institutions in China start right after the Lunar New Year holiday, which can be the minimum of a week, but usually is up to 3 weeks. And so some schools are starting in January during their normal calendar, and some schools are starting in March and going to June. It's and adjusting it, but it's one of the challenges and that we just need to manage. But so reach out as soon as you're interested or your leadership is interested in talking in order for us to give it enough time to be able to run the program. The prices range it is a specific price for the customized program that we have, and we are running them somewhere between right now, so the fall. So I couldn't tell you if this is exactly what would happen. So all those caveats, but each one is custom. They range from $7,000 to $15,000 per student, depending on, again, the services offered, faculty we have to hire, how much is in person, how much is online.
Awesome. So it looks like that is all we have on our question side, but of course it looks like we do have email addresses for everybody here. So if there are questions, I presume they can reach.
Rachel, may I just interrupt for one last comment?
Oh, of course.
I do want to say that some of the rock stars in this were not only on the MCPHS side, but on the CIEE side. The director of the site, Suzanne Han, I had forgotten to mention previously, and I do need to call her out. She has been online with us almost 24 hours. She knows the American culture extremely well. She has been our guardian angel to make sure that not only the students are safe doing their work, but also that they are engaged with MCPHS, which was one of the main goals when we started speaking with CIEE. So just a big thank you to Suzanne and to the CIEE team for their flexibility and patience with the complexity of not only our institution, but of the situation.
Thank you very much.
It's fabulous. Well, I think we've hit the time allotment. And I thank you all for sticking with us through this. I hope it did meet somewhere above the bar of Zoom conversations. You have our contact information. I hope you'll be in touch. And May, do you want to say anything about the NAFSA site and the slides?
Yes, the recording will be up on the site probably by tomorrow at the latest. It takes some time for it to download from the cloud. And at the end of a conference, which is at the end of October, we will be sending out a conference evaluation, not a per session evaluation, but a full conference evaluation. And I hope you will be joining us in the upcoming sessions for the conference as well. Looking forward to seeing everybody again on other events and on our business meeting next week on Thursday at 4 p.m. Thanks again to the panel for your time and insightful discussion. I do think this is a really critical topic, and it's on the mind of many, many universities and programs who are trying to deal with the situation we have at hand. So really appreciate your time and your thoughtful conversation here and sharing true stories about what happened and how you can make it actually successful program. Thanks again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.